Hey there folks, Kozzi here, drafting for Pick One Pack One. I've been itching to get into this one because I'm 1 point away from Master, and so yeah, I'd like to get it straight away. And I've been wanting to do a couple of drafts, but didn't quite have the time to sit down and record, so this is my chance to go hard. Here we have an interesting pack. Striking Snake Formation is a very conditional but powerful card. Otherwise, we're looking at some of our uncommons, all of which are very desirable. False Prince is amazing. Crownwatch Cavalry has a strong upside, and Silverwing Familiar is a very frustrating and irritating creature for opponents to deal with a lot of the time, particularly if these lead us into a Warcry deck. Whilst I do love False Prince, I don't think I want to be committed to two colours straight off the bat, although I do want to just quickly double check just where other people see them. I have the suspicion that they're all probably going to be solid Bs, but it's been a while since I've had... Okay, so A- for the False Prince. Crownwatch is slap bang in the B+. And the Silverwing Familiar is an A. Yeah, so we're talking about very similar ones. These are all cards that draw you into the colour, that incentivize you to want to stay in that colour. And they're all just solid creatures that have a degree of evasion attached. A just basically means it can't be directly targeted. False Prince is such that he's just so big that he's difficult to deal with, although he's probably the most vulnerable to removal, and Crownwatch Cavalry effectively offers two bodies under most scenarios because he throws his health and power onto another unit. I think we'll go with the Familiar. I enjoy playing Warcry. I hope I can get into Warcry. I now have a very interesting choice between a Karmic Guardian, which is just a bomb. It's exceptionally difficult to deal with this creature, and the fact that it can both attack and block means it's fantastic from behind. Torch, which is an amazingly efficient piece of removal, or the Oni Ronin. Yeah, these are really interesting choices. And fortunately I double checked because I missed swapping back over the page. I think when in doubt I take the removal, even though this is an amazing uncommon. So let's grab the torch and see where it leads us. Ooh, it's pretty. So here the Warband Chieftain interests me a lot, the Renegade Valkyrie interests me a lot, as does the Granite Acolyte, as well as the Magma Javelin. The Aspirant and the Watchwing down the bottom, not quite as much. Warband Chieftain leads us in a different direction, but it probably has close to the highest power potential. Renegade Valkyrie is a flyer, which is rare in this color combination, and Acolyte offers value. I think we'll go for Glory and see what we can get here. We have Bladekin Apprentice, which is an amazing aggressive card. Seek Power, which is great if we want to be considering flashing. Huru Fledging is solid, but nothing spectacular. And then the Frostkin and the Thorn Beast. Well, we're in for a penny, we're in for a pound. Let's see where this leads. It's interesting that they left a decent uncommon card that late. And now we have the opportunity to perhaps take some fixing. Healer's Cloak's a good card. Devour and Back Alley Bounce aren't really for us, and neither of them are strong enough for me to go, okay, that's achingly open. Inspire is interesting. It cantrips like Levitate does, but its power isn't quite as useful, and you can't use it as a fast spell. So you can't just use it at the end of your opponent's turn once you realize you can't use that particular piece of power for your turn. And Rampage is a combat trick that will likely be useful in this deck. I'm not super happy taking it this early, but it's really a question of whether I'd rather it over the Inspire. The thing Inspire has going for it is that it cantrips. I'll tell you what, it's been a while since I've been this torn. Yeah, and so I imagine that they'll also have the Rampage, because they're both conditional spells. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been this torn about some of my early picks. Normally I feel as though I have some pretty comfortable decisions. Alternatively, I could speculatively take the Stone Scar banner here, on the assumption that there could be a Smuggler's Stash or something like that coming through later that I'd be wanting to splash for. I think that's where I'm going to go. Neither the Rampage nor the Inspire have fired up my cockles, so instead I think I'll just take the opportunity to find something nice in Shadow. Amethyst Monument is something that's quite nice in Shadow, but Rebel Sharpshooter is not a problem for me to take at all. Desert Marshal, if we would have been going on that Cumbre line before, I would have been happy with. Now my choice is really between the Magma Javelin and the Stonescar Stranger. Stranger represents a continuation of my curve, which I'm happy with. Javelin is a reasonable piece of removal, particularly if I start to get a couple of Warcry creatures, but we just haven't seen any come through, so I am a tad nervous as far as that's concerned. And in general, if I've got a choice between two cards that I'm mediocre on, I'd rather take the cheaper card because it's the one that I'm much more likely to be playing. And there are just more powerful cards in the 4-drop, whereas in the 2-drop, it's pretty bog standard. So yeah, we'll take the Stranger and see where it leads us. Huru Fledgling is the only card that interests me here. Although it's worth noting that Shadow does look a little bit open. We'll take the Rifle and see where it leads us. Nothing else excites me. And the Rally here. Blazing Renegade's not super great. So none of this has me wanting to wake up in the morning excited for life. Divining Rod. Play all units in the top 4 cards of your deck that share a skill with the wielder. Discard the rest. That seems disgusting. Disgustingly bad rather than disgustingly amazing. Twin Brood Sauropod is a strong card. Otherwise, we're probably looking at the Finest Out or the Granite Acolyte. Finest Out is a very useful combat trick. It will blow people out. And I can expect that to be the case. Although the power is off the roof on the Twin Brood. What I need to weigh up is how strong my green currently is. And it's worth noting that the Familiar and the Valkyrie were picks 1 and 3, so I never really saw Justice coming through. Which makes me a little nervous to commit to it. But by the same token, I also sent through some strong time cards, so I don't think I'd be reasonably expecting them to come back to me. Let's grab the Finest Hour and see where it leads us. Okay, so do we want another Familiar or a Ceremonial Mask? I think objectively, Familiar is the more useful and powerful card, especially if we can start to get a couple of pieces of equipment for it. Mask is an endgame card that just wins you the game. Being able to give a creature +4/+4 and being able to kill a creature with 4 health, that's a massive swing. But no, we'll go in on the Familiars and see where it leads us. We now have the options. Yeah, Shadow is tempting me, but now that we've just picked a second Familiar, I feel as though I'm not quite in the right colours for my seat, but we'll do the best out of it. We're going to stay aggressive. That reassures me a lot. Piercing Shot is a great piece of removal. Crown Watch Deserter, it's interesting to note that that's come through, so hopefully we'll get fed a little bit in pack 4. And I'll take my combat trick here. And so, ooh, this is going to be an interesting choice. So, the Rebel Sharpshooter is one of the best commons for fire. Full stop. You know, that's the end of the sentence. Smuggler's Stash is exactly what I've wanted to start splashing for. I still don't have a great amount of equipment yet to make me super excited. But I could start to aggressively pick for it. Stonescar is definitely open in this direction. So if another one gets opened, I have a good chance of snatching it. Let's stay on for the overall curve. I want to play a little bit conservative here. And Valorous Stranger, I normally really don't like cards that give an ability to my opponent as well. But if we can build around it, then this could become very good where we drop a Stranger and then they just run in with Warcry. It could cause a problem for my opponent. We have the choice here between the Watchwing and the Brawler. I think the Brawler will give me more consistent value, especially because it has Overwhelm. So it's a way of just getting those last few points, although it does cost 5, but I don't think I'm going to be playing that Renegade. Watchwing, however, is just massively undervalued for what you get for it. Alright, Brawler it is. None of this is exciting. We'll take the Blast. Yeah, okay. That's super late for cards of that kind of quality. Heavy Axe I could be convinced to pick and include if our card drops a lot. But this isn't looking great, folks. I might be struggling to get up to Master or just hoping that I win my first game. And so I can lock a benchmark down. Okay, now we're beginning to talk. It's a shame that all of these came through in the same pack. Why couldn't you come through in different ones? Furnace Mage is amazing value. Sword of Icaria is a Warcry, Piece of Removal, and Ceremonial Mask is going to make some of my creatures temporarily huge. I really need to work out what this deck wants to be doing. So I don't have many 1-drops yet, and then we get into the Blakekin Apprentice, who just gets bigger and bigger. And if we can drop, a pump spell to help her get past her first turn, she's great. We have a pair of Strangers to try and capitalize on our Valorous Stranger, and it's worth noting that I'll be picking Strangers a little bit more aggressively if I choose to go down that line. And we have a Silverwing Familiar so that if it gets beefed up, it's great. Sharpshooters all want to get beefed up. I think what I want to do is get my Warcry on. Choice between a Torch and a Field Captain. I think I would rather have my Interaction, even though he's a good endgame. And the Longsword is precisely what we've been hoping for. It's a piece of equipment that can start to beef up some of these guys and turn them into a problem. Execute could be the kind of card that I'll be happy to splash for. It comes at the opportunity cost of another Stranger. As it stands, I already have 3 Shadow cards, and it really is helpful for me. I think Dread Return is the one that I'll be most excited to pick up. District Infantry is a good aggressive card and could cause a problem for my opponent. But versus Removal, versus a Stranger that's a curve and possibly Warcries. Yeah, I'll tell you what, even if I don't end up loving this deck, it's been a really interesting draft. Really interesting draft. So, as far as Removal, I currently have a Piercing Shot and 2 Torches. A Sword of Icaria. I'd probably be hoping more for a Smuggler's Stash than an Execute. If I have the Stranger, they're still not great unless I get lucky on the Valorous Stranger. It's not as though I have 2. And the District Infantry is the kind of card that allows me to really get my aggro on, which I think is what this deck wants to do. It feels wrong taking a conditional 1-drop over a piece. This also does 2 damage. Alright, let's go that way rather than trying to get too fancy. Happy to see another Sharpshooter. All I want to do is see ways of beefing it up. Temper is an interesting one, as is Feln Stranger. Temper gives me the Warcry, but also has the opportunity of just shifting a combat. I think I like it more than the Inspire that we were seeing before. Okay. I'll be unhappy if I'm forced to keep it in this deck. And so now I get the choice of whether I'd rather Finest Hours to be my combat trick or my Mithril Mace. If I would have picked that Smuggler's Stash before, I think I'd be taking the Mace, but as is, I think I'd rather just be doing my job in combat and making their life difficult then. We've been a little bit unlucky in having all of our rares be off color, but I don't think I can complain too much when I get a Torch, even though I think, yeah, I would have liked that for my Constructed, but let's grab the fancy Torch. Okay, so now we're getting paid a little bit. We have a choice between the Steelfang Chakram, which is just pure inevitability, the Ornate Katana, which is efficient, the Battlebow Centaur, which is an efficient threat, Treasury Guard, which is a good creature, and the Dark Return. But I think this Chakram, if I can just get a creature, put it on, creature, put it on, creature, put it on, it means that my, wow. How many Torches is too many, folks? Especially as a Crownwatch Deserter would play a good role. I don't think there's ever a time I'm unhappy to draw a Torch. And so now my choice really is between another Combat Trigger and a Dark Return. Dark Return is nice because I do have a couple of cards that are seriously problematic, especially if they get Warcries on them. And I feel as though I've pretty much hit my threshold of tricks. I have 2 Finest Hours, which is probably enough. This does come at the opportunity cost of playing my Execute, but I don't think I'm likely to be playing my second Rampage in this deck. Choice between a Runic Revolver, which is a great weapon at the top, a Treasury Guard, which is a very useful creature, or another Stranger. Let's take a look at our curve. So we have ourselves a solitary 1-drop, which is a little unfortunate for this particular strategy. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4 2s, yeah. So I think we need to take this on curve consideration. Yeah, this isn't looking great. It's not coming together the way I would have hoped. Well, we got the late stash, which is nice. But I don't think we've gotten the cheap creatures that I was hoping for. And without the cheap creatures, the value of our other stuff starts to go down pretty aggressively. Although we do have 4 torches as our solitary form of salvation. Let's just quickly pop in some power so it's easier to do the maths. I didn't mean to add in that extra Hellfire Rifle, although we'll be dropping it sooner or later. So we're probably wanting 17 odd. So 8 plus 7 is 15, 16, 17, 18, and that represents 2 extra fire, so perhaps we could drop one there. 7 7's 14 plus 3 is 17, and then that gives me 7, 8 sources of justice. 2 plus 7 is 9 sources. Okay, I think that's about right. So we're looking at making 10 cuts on this deck. As it stands, we don't have a lot of a top end. We could even perhaps just cut this right out and go down to 16 or so. There's no way I'm playing this many shadow cards. I think because we have so many torches, we can afford to get rid of the Execute. And it's really a question of whether we'd rather the stash or the Dark Return. As it stands, we have enough units, we just need to be careful about how many extra spells we have that don't do anything. There's not a lot that I desperately need that Rampage for. I think Finest Hour is a strict upgrade over it. And given that I have 4 torches, I probably don't need to have a clunky. This isn't a rally deck. So these are the nice easy ones to start off with. Recogulator is not exactly what I want to be doing with my life. Hero Fledgling is useful if we struggle against flyers, but I think I'm just going to be hoping that I finish the game before they have a chance to respond. And if I can cut down another 1 or 2 5s, I think I'll be happy to be running 16. Because we don't have many 4s at all. You can see from the curve here, really heavy on 1s and then cutting straight down the line. Would I rather a stash or a Dusthoof Brawler? As far as creatures that I can return, I have a reasonable number, but how many weapons do I have? Or pieces of equipment? I have literally 2 and 3. Okay, that's enough for me to want a stash there. And I definitely don't want to be cutting down on my units, even though this is a particularly bad one. I think Temper's one of the weakest cards that's left, and perhaps Heavy Axe because I'm just not hyper aggressive. That then does make me only have... Oh, I missed that when counting. I still have 3 side. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that actually is my 4th. Which, knowing that I have a stash, I'm actually happy having that. If it can get me in with one of these quick draw people, then it's fine. Perhaps Dark Return isn't the way. I'd rather just do it with the stash. So yeah, I don't love having a recogulator, but I don't think I can afford to cut down on units. We're a little low. 17 out of 45 is a reasonable expectation of 3 or 4 in a game. So what we're really banking on is we're banking on these torches doing work for us. We're banking on getting a solid 2-drop, either being a Stranger into the Valor Stranger so we can get our Warcry going, or a Bladekin Apprentice. And we're banking on the fact that we have 3 Sharpshooters, that we can get them up in some way which will give us value. Either through a Warcry or through a Finest Hour or a piece of equipment. And then after trading out, our plan then is just to hit the stash and go through. This is the one real bomb that we have in our deck. So the power level isn't super high overall, but it's lean and it's mean. Not as lean and mean as I'd like it to be. So it's probable that we're just on the aggressive end of mid-range, which could get us into trouble rather than being pure aggro. But we'll see how it goes. Alrighty folks, it's been Kozzi here drafting for Pick 1 Pack 1, and I'll see you guys in just a moment.